We will call our September 15th meeting of the Architecture Review Board to order. Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Yes, Jennifer Oberlin.
Present.
Thank you. Nicole Conkle.
Here.
Irma Johnson.
Here.
Patty Cross.
Here I am. Okay.
We have a quorum.
Excellent. What we usually do is everybody who's not speaking puts themselves on mute so that we don't get background noise and whatnot. And when we want to speak, we turn it on and wave our little arms around. Okay. Has everyone had an opportunity to review our minutes? And if so, we would entertain a motion.
I make a motion to approve the last meeting's minutes.
Is there a second?
This is Jen Oberlin, I second.
Excellent. All in favor say aye, please.
Aye.
Okay, that's everybody. All righty. Let's see. I would also entertain a motion we only have 2 items on the agenda tonight. I would entertain a motion to move the second item to first and the first to second.
Where are they?
Nicole?
I so move.
Is there a second?
This is Jen Oberlin, I second.
Okay. Everyone in favor, please say aye. Yes, Henry?
Aye.
Okay. All righty. Then, Madam Secretary, let's call our new first item.
In accordance with Articles 4 and 17 of the City of Frankfort zoning ordinance, Southern Acquisitions, LLC is requesting a certificate of appropriateness to paint unpainted masonry for the property located at 401 Murray Street. The property is more particularly described as PDA map number 062-31-26-015.00.
Thank you. Mr. Jordan.
Yeah. All right. So this property is located on the corner of Murray Street and East 4th Street. It is a multi-family apartment building. The owner has recently acquired the property, Mr. Strong and Mr. Salon. They've recently been acquiring several properties along this corridor in this area, renovating them. As such, they would like to paint this structure, which was built in 1975. It's a brick veneer building. Not a true brick building as some of our other historic buildings are downtown. It's just a veneer, so it's a wood frame building with brick veneer. Anyway, they would like to paint it. We're recommending approval. It's a non-contributing structure to the district as well, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. We have 4 recommended conditions along with that approval.
Commission, anybody have questions for staff? Ms. Conkle.
Hi, I have a couple of questions. So is the applicant proposing to paint the structure in its entirety?
Yes.
Okay. I noticed in the staff recommendations, excuse me, line item 3 says a high quality paint such as acrylic latex exterior paint shall be used. Is there a particular reason you recommend that over a mineral-based paint?
Over a mineral-based paint? Yeah, since this is not a it's a brick veneer structure, so we felt like that whereas older structures kind of need to breathe a little bit better and more, we felt that this would be a better option. I kind of looked at our mural guidelines and regulations as well, and that's from my research, this was the best type of paint to put on a masonry building.
Okay.
All right, one last question, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So it's a brick veneer and it's wood frame underneath. Do you know, and this may be a question that needs to go to the applicant, but do you know what the integrity and the shape and the condition of the exterior of the building under the veneer is?
No.
No. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. All righty. Any other questions for staff?
Yes. Is it going to be painted white?
I'm not sure the exact color. This applicant, their other properties that they have painted, they like to use fairly vibrant, bright colors. So I'm not exactly sure. We don't, our guidelines don't specifically regulate the color choices of the paint, but I'm not exactly sure. I'm going to anticipate something quite bright and vibrant.
Okay. Any other questions for staff? Seeing none, do we have, is there somebody here from the applicant?
I actually don't think the applicant is here with us. Ed, can we still go ahead and vote on this item even though the applicant's not here?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
The applicant was given notice, but if a board member wants a certain response from the applicant, they certainly don't have to vote on it. They can table it and require the applicant to come.
Okay, so what's the pleasure of ARB?
And Nicole, if you want, we can strike number 3. I'm happy to do more research. I actually did not ask and I should have asked our consultant the most appropriate type of paint here. Kind of just jumped to conclusions based upon our mural guidelines that this would be the best type of paint to use. If we want to strike that, we can, and I'm happy to work with the applicant to find the best type of paint to use.
Thank you.
Okay, so do we have a motion or what's your pleasure? Ms. Conkle.
There are a couple of things I guess I wanted to discuss or bring up. I don't know if it's more appropriate to do that now or after a motion's on the floor.
I think the motion comes first and then discussion, but we've done it both ways. So whatever Mr. Jordan would like us to do.
I prefer now and then motion.
Okay, fine.
I actually learned a lot doing this review. I also was under the impression that more modern brick, that the guidance that's out there, both on the preservation and on some of the real estate web pages for online resources, and found out that isn't the case. Most everything I could find said that any brick, except for there was like during the 1890s, there was a specific type of brick that was made literally to be painted, but even up at least through mid-century modern times, I couldn't find anything recommending painting unpainted masonry in the literature. And I was surprised by that.
Okay.
Has anybody else seen any documentation for that?
I haven't. Most of the stuff in my research was, like you said, was for older buildings and older types of brick, and not more modern types of brick that we're discussing here tonight.
Ms. Oberlin, do you have any comments or questions? Ms. Johnson, comments or questions? Uh-oh. Ms. Johnson, can you hear us? We cannot hear you. Turn off. Hit mute. You're mute. There you go.
I'm having some technical issues. I'm using my phone as opposed to my laptop, so bear with me.
Okay.
The question that I had was, the reason that they're painting is just for aesthetic reasons. They're not trying to seal it, or they're not trying to do anything to preserve the finish and the seal on the property. It's just to paint it a different color for their own enjoyment.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Any additional questions? Okay. We would entertain a motion. We hope. Okay.
This is Jen Oberlin. I motion that in accordance with Articles 4 and 17, the City of Frankfort zoning ordinance, that we issue a certificate of appropriateness to paint unpainted masonry for the property located at 401 Murray Street, with the staff recommendations, with the only change being that city staff, consult with the consultant on the ideal type of paint that should be used.
Okay, and including the other three recommendations, correct?
Correct.
Okay, is there a second? Is there a second? Okay, now what do we do?
Make a different motion.
I think so. Would Ms. Johnson or Ms. Conkle like to try a different motion? Ms. Johnson, can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay, just checking, just checking. Do you have a motion?
Ed, no motions. Is it DOA, dead on arrival?
Without any motion, that the record should reflect that it died for lack of a second. So there is no motion on the record.
Okay. Where we are? Evidently. Okay. I'm afraid we are DOA. Let's try our second item.
In accordance with Articles 4, 17, 18, and 19 of the City of Frankfort zoning ordinance, Dominique L. Wilson, doing business as Midwife Counseling Services, LLC, is requesting a conditional use permit in order to allow a major home occupation with counseling and behavioral health services for the property located at 522 Steel Street. The property is more particularly identified as PVA map number 062-14-01-008.00.
Okay, I should also at this point, I should say, I believe we have some public comments in this one. And to set our limit on time on the public comments to 5 minutes each. You don't have to use the whole 5 minutes, but please try not to go over. Okay. Mr. Miller, please.
So this property is located on the corner of Steel Street and Coleman Avenue. The applicant has been working with staff for the last couple of months trying to find a way to get this conditional use permit through. At first we had just for professional offices, but now we're remitting that request to a major home occupation where the applicant will be the only one practicing at this behavioral health counseling therapy clinic. And they'll also be residing there on the second floor during the week. I'm going to make my presentation brief because I believe we'll probably have a lot of discussion about this. Staff had a mixture of positive and negative findings, but in the end, there was nothing that precluded us outright, we felt, to deny the request. We did make a number of conditions in our recommendation of approval in hopes to assuage the surrounding property owners and their concerns with 16 conditions. So I'm happy to answer any questions during this discussion.
Okay, we'll start with members of the commission. Do any of you have questions of staff? Ms. Oberlin.
Jordan, is it 2 or 6 off-street parking spaces? And I didn't see any of that type level of detail in the request.
It's 4 parking spaces are required. Let me go to my section here in my report. So since it's in special capital district, parking for residences is half of what's normally required. So that will require 1 parking space, and then based upon the square footage of the request, 3 additional parking spaces. So a total of 4. 2 parking spaces can be accommodated on street, and staff felt that 2 parking spaces could also be accommodated along Coleman Avenue, whether to be parked side by side there, or there's also an option of doing a pull-off kind of parking area and then 1 spot there in the backyard along Coleman.
Okay. Additional questions for staff?
May I ask a question, Madam Chair?
Surely.
Mr. Miller, the upstairs is to be used for residential. Is that going to be the residence of the owner, or is that going to be a residence that is leased or rented out?
Residence of the owner.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Can we take public questions of staff right now? So long I've forgotten. Or do we have to wait until?
I think we should let the comments be made, and then if there are any questions after that, they can do it, Madam Chair.
Okay. Okay. All right. Is the applicant here? Are we ready for applicant?
Yes, ma'am, I'm here.
All righty. Do you have anything you'd like to say?
No, besides the fact, my goal is I live in Lexington. I have a house up here. I have a business up here. When I purchased Steel Street, it's been 3 years ago. I have a thing about architecture. It drew me, even with the condition of that house. It was pretty horrible, actually. I'm in love with that house. I'm also in love with what I do as a therapist. I do behavioral health, mental health, substance abuse counseling. I see clients all over the state of Kentucky, especially now because we're doing telehealth with the COVID. So my goal is just to want to be able to help service people in y'all's area. That's basically it.
Okay. Have you read all of the 16 conditions that were recommended by staff?
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Miller was very helpful, and he sent me, I actually have it right here in front of me, as well, the report with the conditions.
Are you okay with all of those?
I'm absolutely, I do have one question in regards to that. Say somewhere I were to become incapacitated, could another therapist work in that spot if it's still the one therapist?
In response to that, I don't believe so. The permit is given specifically to you, Ms. Wilson, and that individual, if you become incapacitated, would have to come in and make an application to also get approval.
Okay. And another question I have, am I allowed to have an office administrator or no? Like, because that's usually who does the intake stuff for my clients, takes payments, things like that, answers phone calls. Am I allowed to have that or no?
Jordan?
Yeah, actually, in the regulations, yes, section 19.072, subsection B. 1, employees working or meeting at the home occupation site shall be limited to the persons who reside in the dwelling unit, except that one non-resident employee shall be permitted to be at the site at any one time.
Okay, so I could have my office administrator if needed.
Yes, correct. And condition number 14, we can amend if so desired by the board.
Okay. Because that one is saying no employees, correct?
Right. And that's what I was concerned about, just because of the fact that when I'm seeing clients, I don't answer the phones. I don't do all that. So we'd be missing if there are client emergency calls that came through or anything like that may occur.
We could amend that condition to say no other employees other than the applicant and an office administrator are permitted as a part of this conditional use if the board so desired to approve the request.
Okay.
Am I out of hand if I ask a question before I forget the question
Yes.
that I have?
Yes, you are.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
Just asking.
I know. Okay, so did you have anything else you needed to?
Just a clarification too, with number 5 under the recommendations, just so, because I wasn't really sure. Talking about the signage, and let's see, when I was looking it up, I think it said it had to be flushed against the building. Is that correct? What does that mean? I'm sorry, I just don't know what that means. It doesn't mean it's on the building itself?
Yes.
Okay, I thought so. I just didn't want to assume.
That would be no yard signs and that sort of thing. Okay.
All I have.
Anything else?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Anyone on the commission have questions for the applicant?
I have a question. Can you explain the parking in the back again? I was looking at the chart that's included with our package, and I went by there and inspected the property, and I couldn't see how that many vehicles could be in the back.
Yes, ma'am. And I apologize for that, because when I drew the grid, it was being drawn just off of, I hadn't been down here in a while. And then I went down there recently. I was like, oh my God, okay, that space is totally not like that. So yes. And then I see where Jordan included to where basically it looks like two spaces could be in the back only. And I don't know I think what I was picturing too, because I have that area of the shed, and I don't know if I forgot the shed was there and I'm just including all that space. And that's what I said when I went down there, I was like, whoa, okay, yeah, you were totally off. So no, ma'am, only two would be in the back.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions from the commission? So, Jordan, would we now have public comment?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, in what order? I mean, we usually have the
Whichever one you select gets to speak first.
Oh, dear
You're
Lord.
the chairperson.
This is scary. Mr. Stossberg,
Yes.
5 minutes max.
I have a question to the committee. What are the sizes of the parking spaces? What's the requirement for the parking space size?
Jordan?
Typical space is 9 by 18. In your packet, what I drew is to scale, so it's pretty tight. I recommend that pavers be put down, so the pavers won't be quite 9 by 18. It would be.
I can see the house. I mean, there's the house right across the street. I just went over there with my tape measure in front of the house from the yellow stripe, no parking stripe, to what looks to be the property line is only 31 feet. So you're not going to get two parking spaces in front of the house. I'm not really concerned with the back of the house as much, other than Coleman Alley is a tight spot that has as much traffic flow as it needs to have already. But I don't think there's two parking spots in front. My second thing flows into that first question is, if I heard her say originally her application was for her to work in the building by herself and have one client at a time to alleviate parking. And then I just heard her say that she wants to have a full-time staff person in there in addition to herself, which is going to be another parking spot. I don't think it's going to work just on.
We've lost you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I think the parking that she has requested is going to be tied up, and there's not going to be any parking for her customers. Parking's pretty limited on this street, and if she's going to have a full-time staff person answering phones, and then she's going to be there doing counseling, it's only going to leave two spots open at any given time. I'm afraid that the overflow is going to not work.
Any other comments from you?
My other question would be, I know this is dual residential and commercial, but aren't for a lack of the better term, the codes different for residential and commercial? Would she have to have proper handicap parking, proper handicap access to that building, exit signs, because it's going to be used as a commercial building? It's not going to be used solely as a house.
Jordan, can you answer that?
Yeah, so Public Works and we went down and took a look at the site. They weren't particularly thrilled about the parking along Coleman Avenue, but they've stated that they felt like maybe they could make it work. They did state that they felt like they could get two spaces on there along Steel Street, although as the commenter just stated, it will be a little tight. There is an existing handicap ramp on the at the property that leads up to the front door. That is
It's not. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm happy to work with Public Works about if this was approved to put in a designated handicap spot along the street. That is something that they do regularly around downtown if the conditions are.
If you put a designated handicap spot in the front of that house, then you're going to take away a normal parking spot. And you don't, by your own measurements, you don't have 2 parking spots in the front. 18 and 36.
Could also put a pull-off handicap spot along
school
Coleman Avenue.
1 feet.
Okay.
There's not Coleman Avenue is okay. We can't even pull our car in our yard across the street here to wash it without having the police department cars in our yard, and you all are talking about putting a pull-off spot on a 1-lane alley. That won't work.
Okay.
Patty,
Yes.
could you ask any more commenters to please mention their name and address for record?
I'm sorry. That was Steve's Stossberg.
Steven Stossberg. And the address is 523 Steel Street. It's directly across the street from the house in question.
Okay. Sorry.
Thank you.
I forgot. All right.
I'm sorry.
No picking.
Let's put Ms. Stossberg on hold. Ms. Parker, did you have something you wanted to say? And you're on, you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
I got you.
Perfect. Okay, so I'd like to reiterate what Stephen said about parking. Coleman's not one way, but it is narrow and there's no way for 2 cars to pass in that area. We're also concerned about there being a blind spot when you pull in or out on Coleman from behind the house. I'm also concerned with traffic flow down here. It's a one-way. We dead end, Steel Street dead ends into 2 one-way streets. So you're going to have constant turnarounds, U-turns, and or more traffic on Coleman, which I'm worried about. I'm concerned about loitering and additional people being on the property. I've got a 1-year-old that I'm trying to raise, and I would like to be able to keep him protected as best as possible, which we're working on a fence in the backyard, but that's, going to take a minute. I would also like to know whether or not the letters that we've submitted along with all the neighborhood signed applications have been perfect. Thank you. Wanted to make sure you all have those for review as well, because that states all the concerns. As far as parking, traffic flow, I know Jill's concerned with, runoff if the parking's permitted in the backyard. Steve across the street from that is concerned about people pulling into his yard to access the parking lot. We have there's multiple concerns for that. Jordan's allowed 4 spots, but if you've got her an employee and then she's allowed up to 4 people, that's at least 6 people potentially coming in and out of that building. So you still don't have enough parking, and it's going to impede on where we park. And again, if I go back to the safety of my child, I would like to be able to get him in and out of the vehicle safely close to the house so that I'm not packing him and all the crap you got to take with him everywhere you go, up and down the street. I probably have more time, but I probably shouldn't use it. So I think I'm done.
Okay, you can come back to it if there's a...
And I'm at 523 Steel Street as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I should say that we all have copies of the information that you all sent to staff, the multiple letters, multiple comments and letters and signatures. And those are all going to go into the record. Okay. Miss Robinson.
Yeah. Hey, hi. I live about 4 feet from this building. So I'm very familiar with the building. I've been here since, I think, 1989. 2 concerns. The hour of operation, it's until 9 o'clock at night. There's no stipulations about weekends. And, if you're doing the DUI thing, people probably have to work, so they have to come in the evenings, or they would probably want to come on a Saturday. And there's no stipulations that they can't do this on Saturday. And they're probably, drop off and pick up because they may not have their licenses. So that's, flowing traffic flow all the time. My biggest concern, and I've told Dominique this from the get-go, was that my backyard sits below hers. The grade is just amazing. And if you go down that alley and you look in her backyard, I mean, it goes down maybe a 40% grade. I don't even know. And I don't know, I've already spent probably up over $20,000 trying to control the water in my backyard. And that's without some kind of parking back there, with whatever it is, a pavers or gravel or pea gravel or whatever you want to call it. That's my worst nightmare. I think there's a sight distance problem coming out of there from the alley. That's a small alley. It's only 11 feet wide. And I've talked to her. I understand what she wants to do here, and I know that there's a desperate need for this because I work with the women's shelter. But she's that location. She's stuck. She's not going to be able to expand, and we would hope that she would be successful and she could, provide more services. Well, she's not going to be able to do it at that location because it is what it is. And I would submit that I think it's not the right place for this kind of service. And I'm done saying what I need to say. I've all put everything I had to say in writing, so I'm done.
Okay.
Am I allowed to respond to any of this?
In just a minute.
Okay.
Patty, I didn't get an answer on my question about the code as far as it being a commercial office, as far as
in response to that,
signs.
Mr. Salzberg, in response to that, this board does not make a decision on the code. The specific entity within the city would make that decision. And if it doesn't allow it, it can't be used for that. All right, sir?
I understand. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, sir.
Okay. Is that all of our public comments? Mr. Parker, is that Lucian Parker?
Yeah, Lucian Parker. Let me say just 2 or 3 things.
Okay.
The petition, there was 23 people that signed that petition that was against this recommendation or whatever. My concern at this point in time is the outside of the house. There were structural problems with the front porch. It looks like one corner could fall down. The ramp is not, I don't think the ramp is really good for handicapped people. There's gutters, weeds and growing out of the gutters over there, and the house needs painting. And there's some windows broken out. And my daughter and I worked on a house across the street, and we were cited by the city for all those infractions. And yet she's on the property for, I'd say 2 years, and none of the outside problems have been looked at by the city nor taken care of at this point. I'd like to have this motion either denied, or I'd like to have it put on the table until some of this stuff is taken care of.
Okay.
That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Okay, and let's see what I've got here.
His address is 527 Steel Street.
Thank you.
And I'm Jill Robinson. I'm at 526 Steel.
Thank you.
Very good.
I would like to make a comment if possible as well, please.
Where are you? Who are you?
Sorry. My name is Dave Pritchard. I live at 523 Corals Court, which adjoins Coleman Alley. I have a few comments to begin. We support Dr. Wilson's mission. We hope her business succeeds, but we don't think this is the best location for it. What jumped out at me a lot in this staff report is a lot of contradictions. The first thing I noticed in some of these guidelines, it says a home occupation is an accessory use which is incidental to residential purposes. If Dr. Wilson is choosing to stay at this residence just so she can operate this business, that is not incidental. One of our other greatest concerns is traffic. As other people have stated, Coleman Avenue is a very narrow alleyway with a blind entrance. If people are backing in and out of a parking lot back there, that's going to complicate an already sometimes dangerous area. People speed in and out of there all the time. I feel like we have also concerns and some questions about how you all would be able to enforce a lot of these conditions. It seems like they would be particularly difficult to enforce. How would you be able to verify that she's staying at this address frequently enough that it would be considered a residence? How are you going to verify how many employees, clients, or guests are in the residence at one time? How long would the permit remain conditional, and for what length of time would you expect to enforce these conditions? And that'll conclude my comments and questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Jordan, can you address those concerns?
With regards to being able to enforce some of the conditions, specifically the number of employees, when someone fills out a business license application with the city of Frankfort, it's reviewed by planning and zoning, as well as other entities such as the fire marshal, building inspector, etc. And on that, they list, how many employees that they're going to be actively working there. That's a legally binding document. If it comes to find out that they are violating that, whether it be through complaints from neighbors, observations from staff, there are procedures that will go through. If that is the case, that finds out that the applicant is violating those, it would take time, but that business license and this conditional use can be, null and void if those were to occur, any violations of that.
Okay.
With regards to the staying there, no, I'm good. Never mind.
That would be on the same circumstance. If someone reported it or whatnot, that would be the only way that would be addressed. Okay. All righty. Now where are we? Oh, me. Let's see.
Solution Parker again.
Oh, yes.
He said the conditions could be enforced. Does that mean they might not be enforced? That's a question, I guess, for Jordan.
Yes, it would be.
No, that's not what that means.
What does it mean?
It means that those conditions are in place, and if they are found to be violated, it will be enforced. That's not the issue we're here for tonight. We're here about this application.
Well, I'm just asking a question what he just stated.
I understand. I just responded.
Okay, that's good.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Commission members, do we have discussion on this?
Madam Chair, I believe that the applicant wanted to respond and you said no until the end. So now would be the time to do that.
I'm so sorry. Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Yes. Dr. Wilson.
Yes, thank you. Well, what I wanted to discuss as far as what my main practice is behavioral health. As far as with the groups, as a part of my practice in Lexington, I have a DUI program. I have no problem not having a DUI program in this location. So that would remove there being more than one client at one time. There would be no groups because I would not run a DUI program. As far as if I'm the only, from what Jordan told me, because of the square footage of the house is why I need so many spaces. The desire is just for me. to be there. The convenience is if I have an office admin, but worst case scenario, I can also transfer those calls to my office admin in Lexington. So if it boiled down to where it just needed to be me and one client, it would be me and one client.
Okay.
And also, I wanted to respond on, actually, I have received citations on this property, and every time I've gotten one, I've taken care of it. I just got one, actually, that is in the process. I hired this Jade Star Landscaping. They're supposed to be keeping up with their property. And I received the letter. Actually, the end of last week, I was out of town. So I called him while I was out of town, like, hey, they're saying something about there's weeds growing on the building and then the gutters. And he advised me he would take care of that. But I have received 3 various citations on this property. And the property is not being ignored because I have the copies of the citation. Matter of fact, one of those I did receive from Jordan himself. So they are on top of what's going on with this property.
Doctor, aside from that, this is Ed Logan. I represent the board. Are you willing to put as part of the conditions that you won't have the DUI program there? Did I hear you say that?
Yes, I'll wipe out the DUI. That's not a problem because that's just a side part of what I do. The main thing what I do is the behavioral health counseling and the individual. And like I said, it's just me and one person at the same time. So there would not be overflow or people hanging out, watering and things like that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Logan. Other discussion? Ms. Oberlin.
So based on what I just heard, then one of the conditions would become not to hold group sessions, not to specify type.
Right. That's what I would suggest also. Okay. Where'd she go? Ms. Johnson, did you have anything? Ms. Conkle.
Okay. So I went through and read everything that was submitted by email on the public comments, as well as what the public has mentioned here tonight. And there were several recurring concerns. And I cannot remember, I didn't write down when I was taking notes which letters the recurring things came from. For that, I apologize. Putting aside anything having to do with code enforcement, since that is not what we're tasked with. Basically, the short list was both direct and indirect adverse effects to the property and surrounding properties, loss of green space, drainage, and traffic flow, which is also brought up as a safety concern. In one of the letters, there were several, they laid out recommendations, like studies for traffic flow or documentation of showing how this would work. And I thought that some of those were really good ideas. So I was kind of wondering, taking into consideration this applicant's willingness to limit the visits to one-on-one sessions with no additional staff, taking into consideration removing the DUI program, group sessions, however the application states it explicitly, would it be possible to accumulate some of the additional information requested by other residents and neighbors, apply these considerations that the applicant is giving, and address this again in the future when all that information is available?
Like, table it till next month?
Just wanted to discuss that with the board as an option.
Okay. Ms. Oberlin.
And I think kind of relating to that, and maybe I misunderstood you, Jordan, but were you saying proposing putting parking spaces on the alley? And that you met with Public Works and they thought that would work?
Yeah, one pull off there, it would be a little close. The layout in the area.
And I think what I'm saying is, and Barrister Logan, tell me if I'm wrong, I think I would want to see something from Public Works where that is actually feasible, because I mean, I'm very familiar with that alley and that just seems highly unlikely to me.
Okay, sure.
You know, something from them in stone where this would be okay with them.
Okay. Any other comments? Ms. Johnson? You're so quiet tonight.
Actually, the only comment that I had was, I'm not familiar with the structure. I did spend a lot of time down there today checking out the area, and I too have some concerns about that alley, and I don't know how you would find enough space for an additional parking spot back there. So that does, and I didn't see any way that you would be able to put parking behind without a lot of grading to make it a level entry from the alley. So those were my major concerns, was basically, you know, exactly how those things would be done, and you know, what were the particular structural design. I'm not as familiar with the streets and how wide a parking space has to be, or how short in length that one might be. So those were the main things that concerned me. But I did have a question, since the applicant is with us. When was the last time that property was occupied? I'm just curious.
I have never occupied that property. I bought it. It was in very bad condition. The whole house was full of the previous owner's items. There was a lot going on with that house. So it's never been occupied since. I've owned it since 2017.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I wasn't sure. Okay. Thank you.
I could probably answer that question. Doris Thurman was the woman who lived there for years and years, and when she passed away, probably 15 years ago, her son lived there maybe 4 years. So I would say since at least 2011, maybe 2010, that it's been basically abandoned, but I could not get the city to legally call it an abandoned property.
Oh, it's 10 years.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I'm hearing tabling from you all, but nobody has said it. So I would entertain some sort of either a motion or.
Ms. Cross, can I ask Jordan for something else? If we are going to table it and we're going to have Public Works look at the parking, can the city engineer also take a look at the backyard and see if there are any concerns or any recommendations they may have with regard to drainage onto other people's property?
It's a great idea.
Yeah. And let me also add that there's a sewer line that runs through the back of that yard, and almost in the middle of that backyard.
Okay. All right. So, Ms. Conkle.
Can you hear me now? Okay. Just to continue what Councilor Logan mentioned, the letter I was referring to that we got in public comments, I pulled it up on my other screen here, and that is listed as some of the recommendations in public comments, looking at in-person inspections of the property. This is requesting an engineer analysis for parking, looking at the drainage, street safety, loss of green space, and again, the traffic. So basically, I think that it would be good to table this until we could get that information and with that information, take into consideration that the applicant is taking steps to reduce the needed and incorporate
It's
that.
what? Did you read the end of it? You kind of went out on us.
And while accumulating that information, take into consideration the applicant's willingness to minimize the parking needed by modifying our business plan.
Okay. Alrighty, is that a motion, ma'am?
I would like to make that a motion, please.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I will second that.
Thank you. Let's call the roll.
Ms. Johnson,
Yes.
Ms. Oberlin,
Yes.
Ms. Conkle,
Yes.
and Ms. Cross.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you, everyone. And we'll look forward to our reports from City Works and Public Works and all of that. Is there any other business? Seeing none. Ms. Conkle. Ms. Conkle. Mute. There you go.
Okay. Is it okay to go back and ask a question of council regarding the first application tonight?
I'll be happy to answer that.
Oh, okay. Since the way this went and there was no motion, will the applicant have an opportunity to come back before the board or?
Certainly. There was a motion and it failed.
Okay.
The applicant can do any modifications or ask for reconsideration and have another matter set. So that doesn't preclude them from coming back.
Great. Thank you so much.
Would they have to pay another fee?
You could waive that fee if you wish.
I think we should, if they want to return.
Do we need that motion made?
Well, if they make the application again, we can do that. Let's don't put the cart before the horse. That hadn't been made yet. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
All righty. Then we'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
This is Jen Oberlin, and I motion we adjourn.
Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you. All in favor, say bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.